There we go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wisdom. Once again, every single Tuesday, 5:30 to 6 a.m. in the mornings, and you're so welcome here. If this is your first time joining, quick disclosure, you can head up to our socials, to our link in our bios, and you will see Wisdom has been running now for 21 weeks. It's going to run for 31 weeks, and all the previous episodes and content are up on our YouTube channel. It's not yet mature, or our Spotify, Apple podcast channels, everything like that. So just browse through our history. Wherever you're watching from, you'll find the links, and it's absolutely amazing having you here this morning. So I want to begin with the only possession you have that you cannot keep. And already I know exactly, you know where I'm heading with this. It's not your money. You can keep your money. You can store it. You can hide it. You can grow it. You can hand it to someone else to watch. It's not your health, not your name, not your work. All of those in some form you can kind of like hold on to, right? There is exactly one thing you own this morning that is leaving whether you like it or not. It is leaving right now. It left while I said that sentence. And it is leaving while you hear this one. And there is nothing, no amount of intelligence, no amount of wealth, no amount of willpower that will buy a single second of it back. And of course, we're talking about time this morning. And here's the strange thing about it. The thing I want to build this whole kind of like morning on, money. You have to decide to spend. Time, you spend by default. You are spending it at this exact moment, at the identical rate as every other person alive. We've all got the same in common. And you did not choose to. The spending is automatic. The only thing that is not automatic, the only thing left to you is whether you meant to spend it in the way you did. And that is the entire subject this morning as part of our Wisdom series. Wisdom is our series that we see what people like Solomon, or not people like that, what Solomon wrote 3,000 years ago, and how we can apply that into our businesses as entrepreneurs, as project managers moving forward. So, I don't want to say we are talking about time management. We lecture a lot on time management, but I am a firm believer that the topic in itself, the subject in itself, is completely misunderstood and misguided and wrong heading, right? And I want to say that clearly because almost everything written about time management, about this for leaders, is written under the wrong heading. We have been handed 1,000 systems for managing time, as though time were an unruly team member who needs better supervision. You cannot manage time. Nobody ever has. Time does not slow down for the organized man and speeds up for the lazy one. It moves at one speed for all of us, indifferent to our calendars. What you can do is something the scriptures actually ask of you. And it is far stranger, far more searching thing than management. Listen to how the Bible frames it. This is Moses, the oldest prayer in the book of Psalms, a man near the end of a very long life, right? Of course, talking about Psalm 90, verse 12. So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. Hold that word, number. He does not pray, teach us to fill our days. He does not pray, teach us to optimize our days, to leverage them, to extract more from them. He prays, apologies guys, he prays, teach us to number them, to count them. The way you count anything you know is finite and will run out. And look at what the counting is for. Not productivity, not output, a heart of wisdom. The numbering of days is not an efficiency exercise, it is a formation exercise. Moses is saying that the moment you truly grasp how few your days are, something happens inside you that no scheduling app has ever produced. He's saying you become wise. You start spending the thing differently, not because a system forced you to, but because you finally understood what it was. So that is the posture for this morning. Not a better calendar, a truer count. And notice how different those two are. A man trying to fill his days, asks every morning, how much can I get into today? A man trying to number his days asks something else entirely. How many of these do I actually have And what is today worth against that count? The first man optimizes a Tuesday. The second man weighs it. One of them is doing arithmetic. The other is doing wisdom. And I sat with enough leaders as a business consultant at the end of long careers to tell you which one arrives at 60 with a life and which one arrives with a very full archive of Tuesdays he cannot even remember. Because the leaders I've watched waste their lives almost never did it through laziness. As a matter of fact, they were very proactive and very active. They did it through a quiet, lifelong assumption that there would be more time than there turned out to be. They were not idle. Most of them were exhausted. They simply never sat down and numbered the days. And so they spent 40 years as though they had 400. Let me show you the 3 ways that goes wrong, and then one way it can go right. The first way we lose time is the one nobody photographs because there's never a single moment, I would say, to photograph, right? Take a picture of. Proverbs gives us a picture of it, and I find it almost unbearable in how accurate it is. The writer says he went for a walk, and on his walk, he passed a piece of land. Watch what he sees, right? It's in Proverbs 24, verse 30 to 34. We've read this quite a number of times in our Proverbs journey, and actually Proverbs 24, today is the 23rd. This should be your proverb for tomorrow if you're reading a proverb every single day. That's what kind of like encouraged or started this entire series of wisdom. So it reads as follows. I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense, and behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. And I want you to follow the writer's eyes, because he is doing something kind of like deliberate when he writes that. He does not start with a man, he starts with the land. Overgrown with thorns, choked with nettles, the wall, the boundary, the thing that kept the field a field, broken down and kind of like lying in pieces. And only then does he tell you whose field it is. He goes on and saying it's a man lacking sense, a sluggard. And here's the part I want you to sit with. Nobody attacked this field. No storm flattened it. No enemy burned it. No single catastrophe happened here at all. The man did not do anything to ruin it. That is exactly how it got ruined. This is the terror hidden in the picture. A field does not need to be destroyed. It only needs to be left. Thorns do not require permission. Nettles do not need to be planted. Decay is the thing that happens on its own, especially in the absence of attention. You do nothing, and the nothing is what does it. And then the writer tells you how the leaving actually happens. And it is the most honest line in the passage, right? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. Not a decision to waste a decade. Nobody decides that. A little, and then a little more. Each one defensible, each one nothing on its own. A man does not lose his field in an afternoon of kind of like grand laziness. He loses it in 1,000 small, reasonable permissions to not tend it just yet. And then the last image, poverty will come upon you like a robber, like an armed man. It arrives suddenly. It feels sudden. One day the man looks up and the field is gone, and it feels like a robbery, like something was taken from him overnight. But it was not taken overnight. It was given away by the teaspoon over the years, in increments so small that not one of them ever felt like the moment if it was lost. Now hear this as a man who runs a business, right? Not as a man reading an old poem. Your years do not leave you in disasters. I've watched leaders survive every disaster you can actually name. The years leave you the way the field went, through the unguarded gap. The scroll you did not decide to start, the meeting that you should have been, 3 lines of a message, let me just quickly check that quietly ate the one clear hour you had all day. None of them a catastrophe. all of them a little folding of the hands. And Proverbs has a brutal little line for the busyness we used to hide it from ourselves. And it's in Proverbs 14, verse 23. It says, "In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty." Read that, kind of like listen to the two halves, or if you read it, read the two halves against each other. Toil, it's actual work, the field genuinely tended, produces something. But mere talk, motion that feels like work and isn't, the meeting about the meeting, the endless circling, tends only to poverty. You can be the busiest man in the building and still be the sluggard in the passage. The field does not care how tired you are. It only asks whether you tended it or merely talked about it. So the first loss of time is not idleness in the obvious sense. It is attention given by default instead of on purpose. The hours nobody chose, the field nobody attacked, and nobody tended, slowly becoming thorns. But there is a loss of time deeper than the unguarded field. And it does not come from the careless man. It comes from the careful one, the planner, the strategist, the leader who is anything but a sluggard. It is the quiet assumption that he owns tomorrow. Proverbs names it directly, and the bluntness of it stops me every single time. Proverbs 27 verse 1 says, "Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring." Notice what he calls it. He does not call it planning. Planning is good. We will get there. He calls it boasting, to presume on tomorrow, to build your whole life on the silent certainty that it will be there, on your terms, in the shape you expect that. Solomon says is a form of pride, a boast, a claim of ownership over a thing that you actually do not own. And we make this boast constantly, almost always without words. We make it every time we say, "I'll deal with it later." Every time we postpone the apology, the rest, the conversation with our child, the thing that matters but isn't on fire, and forward under tomorrow, we are quietly certain belongs to us. It does not belong to us. That is the whole point of the verse. You do not know what a day may bring, not what a year may bring, a day. The next 24 hours are genuinely outside your control. And the steward who forgets that it is not being strategic is boasting. The New Testament picks up this exact thread and aims it straight at people like us, at builders, at planners, at business people, at men with strategy. James puts it in almost mockingly. He pictures the entrepreneur saying, "Today or tomorrow, we will go into such a town, spend a year there, trade, make a profit." The whole confident plan laid out. And then he says, "You do not even know what tomorrow will bring." What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. And his correction is not stop trading and not stop planning, because a lot of people recklessly stop being business people and entrepreneurs, and we've got a massive calling in our lives as entrepreneurs to create, to steward, to shepherd, to solve problems. We need to be there. God loves business people. Don't be that person just say, "Well, if it's for nothing, it's just going to stop trading and stop planning." It is one small phrase he says we should have hung over the entire plan. If the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Same posture as Solomon. Plan the year. Just stop pretending you signed for it. And here's a verse that sits underneath it and tells you why. Proverbs 16 verse 9, looking at biblical wisdom and how we can apply that in our businesses. "The heart of a man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps." We've seen that on coasters, on mugs, on everywhere. We know that. Look at the order of that carefully, because it is actually easy to misread. It does not say, "Do not plan." The man plans his ways. That is presented as the normal, even good thing for a man to do. The heart plans. That's fine. What the verse does is name who actually establishes the steps. You plan the way. You should plan the way. God establishes the walking of it, meaning you hold the map and he holds the road. And the wise man is the one who never confuses the two. That's wisdom. That's how you apply wisdom in your entrepreneurial journey. Now, I have to be careful here because there is a lazy way to hear this. Somebody always hears the Lord establishes his steps and concludes, then why should I plan at all? Why steward anything if it's just all in his hands? Just float, just trust. Proverbs slams that door completely shut and hard in the very next breath of its teaching on time. And that's in Proverbs 21 verse 5, where it says following. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. The plans of the diligent. Scripture is not against planning your time. It is emphatic in favor of it. The diligent plan and their planning leads surely to abundance. The opposite of presumptuous boaster is not the man who refuses to plan. It is the man who plans diligently and holds it kind of like loosely. So watch where the steward actually stands. He stands between the two areas, and both of them are about who owns the time. On one side is the man who will not plan because he is passive or fatalistic or just folding his hands and his fields fills with thorns. On the other side is the man who plans as though he is the owner of the estate, who boasts about tomorrow, who has never once written a plan with the words of, if the Lord wills anything near his heart, and who will one day discover, like every man before him, that the steps were never his to establish. The steward plans like the first man works and trusts like the second man cannot. He fills the calendar diligently, and then he opens his hand over the calendar because he knows the difference between the one who holds the map and the one who holds the road. And that is the turn I want you to feel this morning. Stewardship of time is not, at the deepest level, a productivity skill. It is a posture of the heart that has stopped pretending to own what it was only ever lent. Which brings me to the last thing and the most important. Because once you have stopped pretending you own all the time in the world, a real question finally becomes possible. Not, how do I get more done? A better one. What is this hour actually for? Solomon, son of wisdom, literature, Ecclesiastes, gives us the line everyone half knows and almost no one applies to a calendar. And it's in Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1. It says, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. We tend to read that as poetry. It is not poetry. It is allocation. What it means for a man with a diary is that your hours are not interchangeable. They are not a uniform fuel that you pour into whatever is loudest. Each one belongs to a season. There's a time for the urgent thing and a time for the slow thing, a time for building and a time for resting, a time for the work that pays this quarter and a time for the work that pays in 20 years only. And wisdom, the heart of wisdom that Moses prayed for, is largely the skill of matching the hour to the season it actually belongs to, instead of letting the urgent devour every hour by default. And here's what we do wrong as leaders. And it is not where I would say you would expect. We spend time, they spend their time almost entirely on what pays back soon. The deal closing this month, the fire burning today, the number due this quarter, and it feels reasonable. It feels like diligence because all of it is real and all of it matters. This is the quiet violence the urgent does, to the important. The urgent thing is never evil. It is just loud and it is always now and has a way of presenting itself as the only adult choice in the room. So the hour that belonged to the slow season, the season of building a person, or mending a trust, or simply being present somewhere it would not show up on a dashboard, gets quietly handed to the loud season instead. Not once, not dramatically, the same way the field went. A little at a time, each surrender perfectly defensible until a man looks up one day and realizes he gave 30 years to the things that were merely urgent and almost nothing to the few things that were actually his to plant. But a steward of time learns to do something that looks, on the surface, almost irresponsible. He spends some of his hours on things that will not pay back in any season he is sitting in. The old picture for this is a man who plants a tree he knows he will never sit under. He will be gone before it gives shade. He plants it anyway for whoever is standing where he stood a generation kind of like after he's gone. And bring that into a company, into a life. The hours you give to forming a young person who will be ready long after you have moved on, the slow work of building character into a culture that will outlast your tenure, the time poured into your children that returns nothing this quarter, believe me, and everything hopefully across your life. That's at least the promise that I live by with my kids being very young. The trust that compounds invisibly for years, and then in some season you may not even witness, holds an entire thing together. None of that survives a pure efficiency test. None of it pays back soon. And it is almost always the most important use of a finite life that there is. The thorn field came from giving time by default. The boast about tomorrow came from forgetting the time was lent. And this, planting what you won't sit under, is what time looks like in the hands of a man or woman who has finally numbered his or her days and gotten the heart of wisdom that Moses prayed for. He stops asking the hour to pay him back. He starts asking what it was for. So let me leave you with a test, not a plan for the week ahead. We are all very good at plans for the week ahead. And the week ahead is exactly the place we do our boasting. I want to give you a different test, a kind of like a backward one. Look at last week, not your calendar. Your calendar records your intentions, and intentions actually do lie sometimes. Look at where the hours actually went, the real ones. And then, add them up honestly. The meetings, the screen, the worry, the work, the people, the rest you did or did not take. And then ask the only question that matters about a finite, unrefundable, already spent thing. Did I mean it? Not was it productive? Not did I get a lot done? Did the week added up go to the things a man who had numbered his days would have given it to? Or did it go a little at a time to a field nobody chose to tend, to the fence of a tomorrow nobody actually owns? Because the days are numbered, yours and mine both. That is not a morbid thought. It is the most clarifying one that there actually is. The hours are leaving whether we mean them or not. The spending is automatic. The meaning is the only part left to us. So number them and then spend them like a man or woman who knows the count diligently. That was our opening topic, week number 1 when it comes to the wisdom series, was the topic of diligence. Go back to our YouTube channels, to our podcasts. We've got all 21 weeks straight up there. It's called Not Yet Mature. And diligently was the first topic that we spoke about. Diligently with an open hand, planting things that you will not live to sit under. And that is the whole point of it, or I would say even the whole of it. A heart of wisdom was never about getting more time. It was about becoming the kind of person the time was worth spending on. So thank you so much for joining this morning. We are here every single Tuesday. If you want to follow along on the journey, wherever you like watching this from, please just like and subscribe. You'll get notified. Sign up for our newsletter because our resources on wisdom, on off the cuff, on our business, latest AI, everything out there is actually going out weekly. It went out yesterday. It goes out between a Friday and a Monday. So sign up for our newsletter. And thank you for being here this morning. Have a beautiful day and enjoy the week. Not manage that time, be diligent with your time. And thank you for joining in.